and have you do the one leg stand. I'd like for you to stand with your feet together, arms down by your side. And when I ask you to begin, you're going to take one foot, you're going to raise it 6 inches off the ground. You're going to keep your foot level to the ground, keep your arms down by your side. You're going to count 1001, 1002 until I tell you to stop.
Okay.
Do you understand the test?
Yes.
Okay. You may begin.
1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010, 1011, 1012, 1013, 1014, 1015, 1016, 1017, 1018, 1019, 1020, 1021, 1022.
Thank you. Okay. I won't make you complete the whole test, but
Okay.
an actual test, although the officer won't tell you this, takes 30 seconds. Okay. We're going to try that test again, this time seeing if the beer goggles make any difference. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to have you put those on
All right.
and tell me when you're ready to begin. You're going to keep your feet together and your hands down by your side until I ask you to begin this test. When I ask you to begin, you're going to take 1 foot and raise that foot 6 inches off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to keep that foot level to the ground, and you're going to count aloud 1001, 1002, and so on until I tell you to put your foot down. During that time, you're going to keep your hands down by your side. Do you understand the test?
Yes.
You may begin.
1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010, 1011, 1012, 1013, 1014, 1015, 1016, 1017, 1018, 1019, 1020, 1021, 1022, 1023.
And this would continue for 30 seconds, but I'll ask you to go ahead and stop now. The one leg stand test is a test that has 4 clues. If you use your arms for balance, if you put your foot down, if you hop or you sway to keep your balance, those are all clues of intoxication. Once again, you only need 2 clues on the one leg stand test to fail that test. Additionally, if you put your foot down 3 times, it's an automatic failure. Okay? So in my example, the subject put his foot down 2 times. And if I had continued the test for the total 30 seconds that's required, it's possible he would have put his foot down again simply due to the fatigue of the unnatural position. And yet that alone, putting your foot down 3 times, would be an automatic failure. Okay? So, field sobriety tests, when done, field sobriety tests, when administered correctly to the right segment of the population, can actually have very powerful results and very valid results. In fact, if you fail all 3 field sobriety tests and those tests were administered correctly, there's a 94% probability that you are over a 0.08. Okay, that's the combined effect of all 3 tests. Individually, the walk and turn and the one leg stand would be in the 60s and 70s, but combined with the HGN, it is now over 90% accurate in predicting whether or not a person is a 0.08 or greater. But once again, the key factor here is the officer administering those tests correctly. That's what you're looking for as you're reviewing DWI videos, right? Because the narratives almost always say the same thing. It's like a checklist they go through. This is what I saw. But you're looking for what can actually be seen on video, okay? This is also why I advise people not to do field sobriety tests. If you're asked to do field sobriety tests, you politely decline them because it's very, very easy to fail. So if you were stopped and accused of driving while intoxicated, I would say be very polite, but don't do field sobriety because it's not going to help you. Okay. In our example using the beer goggles, you see an example of just how disoriented you can actually feel particularly when you're put in unnatural positions. Completely sober, it's difficult to do, right? So imagine you're doing that with something that has now affected potentially your judgment, your small muscles, perhaps even your large muscle groups, right? It's the state's burden. If they have a case they think they can prove, let them do it, right? If they get a warrant for your blood, of course you should not fight that. But it's their job to gather the evidence, not yours to provide it against yourself.
So the whole idea that you speak, is that not one of the tests? The doing the alphabet or anything like that? Is that part of a field sobriety test?
It's not part of the standardized field sobriety test battery, but alternative sobriety tests can be administered. So right now what we're talking about are the standardized field sobriety tests for people who are stopped driving, who can take these tests. You might have individuals who are not good candidates for different tests. Let's say one leg is in a cast, or they tell you they have a medical condition, or perhaps they're over the age of 60, which is the groups that were studied were all essentially under 50 when these tests were developed. So if you fall outside of those parameters, the officer might use other tests that can be helpful in just indicating whether or not the person has all their mental and physical faculties. Other questions? And there are many other non-standardized tests that the officers can use.
Difficult, because I have seen a couple of the count from here to here backwards and like that. Do you have to do that? Could you refuse that as if you wanted to?
Absolutely. So although when officers ask you to do these things, it sounds more like a directive. So if I'm an officer investigating a DWI, I'm just saying, I'm going to have you do some field sobriety tests. That didn't sound like a question. I'm going to have you count backwards. But it is actually a request, and you do have the ability to say no. So it doesn't matter what the test is, you can politely say no. I'd rather not. That makes sense.
What can you offer some phrases of what somebody actually might say to an officer to politely decline, like, I work for an attorney's office, or I have an attorney friend, or something like that? Like, what would be a way to politely decline?
That's a great question, because you don't necessarily want to say, my attorney told me not to do these tests, because then it sounds like you have an attorney, which raises other questions. But to say I have a friend who is an attorney who told me not to do field sobriety tests, or even I just don't trust those tests, would be a perfectly fine answer. You don't want to be combative or argumentative. Simply say no, I'd rather not. Thank y'all for being here and your questions, and particularly for volunteering to come up and do field sobriety tests. I really appreciate it, and look forward to answering any other questions you might have about this subject.